Fashion game is the end game. That's an expression that's thrown around a lot in the MMO space, specifically in Destiny. It was a meme for a while in Destiny 2, trying to get different shaders and stuff like that. But there's truth behind it that players really like worrying about what their character looks like, what their weapons look like at the end of the day. And that's really important. And I will say Destiny has come a very long way from what shaders do and how they interact with stuff, but there are still some shortcomings that we want to address in our own system. So let's talk about Destiny's system very quickly here, and then we'll go into which changes we're making in our game. So for those not familiar, Destiny uses a shader system where you have these preset color palettes that adjust your weapons. Now, it's come a long way, as there is a ton of palettes, a ton of options, as you can see. And as someone that's played for many, many years, I have a large collection. But this kind of hits where the first issue is, that if you haven't played for a long time, you don't have access to nearly as many as I do. There are spots to buy some. There's a daily rotation of new shaders, but that requires in-game currency that if you haven't played for a while, you probably don't have enough to buy a lot of. And as I've been clicking through this, you've probably noticed that there's another issue. Some weapons don't shade how you think they will. Yes, this weapon's bone-like structure is changing, but this more fleshy pink texture underneath doesn't change at all. There are also then other weapons that shade in similar fashions, and also everything has to apply to these shaders, and sometimes things don't always shade how you would expect them to. Textures that you would hope would cover only certain parts don't. Here, this checkered element covers everything. That doesn't even get into exotic weapons, which exotic weapons you can't shade at all. They have ornaments that will change the color, but as you can see, there's no large palette selection for me to customize this item further. And this isn't a limitation, because there's been bugs in the game that allow you to preview a shader on exotic weapons. This is strictly because Bungie wanted you to buy these ornaments, and also the first couple ornaments they released when the game first came out were literally just colored shaders. Now, there are some benefits to the shader system, don't get me wrong. Some of the benefits being that some of these shaders can be unlocked by completing hard challenges, which is what we love in games. There's also the element that there are these moving pieces and these moving textures where things move around the weapon. But I've always found one of the biggest limiters being that the shader doesn't always apply exactly how you want it to. So, how are we addressing that in Project Fireteam? I want to pre-state this by saying that this isn't the end-all be-all system that's going to solve every issue that I just mentioned with Destiny, but it does approach a lot of the problems, and it does come with its own few limitations. But I do think that the strengths it brings are stronger than the limitations that it provides. So let's look at the holdover weapon here. And when you click on this little eyedropper, you have the option to pick 4 different areas: primary, secondary, alternative 1, alternative 2, and there's one more section that we can include, alternative 3. On our end, as the designers, we are able to group different parts of the weapon into these different categories. So here you can see, as I highlight primary, it's going to show you what coloring primary does. This here attaches to the top and to the magazine. Secondary does the bottom of the weapon along with the trigger. Alternative 1 is the muzzle, and then alternative 2 is those 2 little pins that are in the middle. So if I click on here, we have a lot of options right off the bat, and we know right off the bat that this is going to change only those elements. So let's go ahead and pick a color. So I'm going to pick a bright red color. When you're working on the base texture, as you can see, we have no texture applied. It does a blend option. So this keeps a lot of the weapon's original elements to it, and we can change the brightness, we can change how metallic it is, we can remove a lot of the metallic element by upping the roughness of the weapon, we can find a nice middle ground that we like, and right off the bat we have quite a bit of capabilities, because now we have a red element here and a gray element down here. Well, what if we want to make this gray something? What if I'm really a huge fan of a red and blue combo? We pull in the blue, we up the tint, we up the brightness a little bit, and now the weapon has this cool little red and blue hue. Maybe not my particular taste, but somebody out there might like something like this. But we can go even further, because obviously now we can also go ahead and change the muzzle. Maybe this muzzle is something that I want to have a really bright color to. And again, this isn't my particular taste, but I'm sure there's somebody out here that might want some emerald green color up here. So as you can see right off the bat, you can now adjust different colors, which is really cool. We can go a layer further though. So you might be looking at this and saying, okay, well, this red obviously does not match exactly what's going on here. And that's because it is a blend. No problem. We go ahead and change the texture to this pure white texture, mess around with the brightness, the roughness, and now you immediately have something that is a lot closer to the red that you have picked here. Obviously, when you put in things like metallic and roughness and blend, those are all going to adjust and affect the base color, but it gets a lot closer here. So if you ever have a weapon that has a purple tint and you try to put red on top of purple, obviously you're not going to get that pure red. That's what this pure white texture is going to do. But one thing we mentioned that Destiny does well is that it has shader unlocks for completing hard challenges. Obviously, when a player now has access to the full shader system right off the bat, that's good in the sense that they don't have to go unlock certain color combos. They don't need to try finding a shader that's gold and white to get a gold and white colored weapon. They can just come and make it. But we still want unlockables, and that's where this texture system comes into play. So there's going to be a couple presets at the beginning. I can't tell you which one of these are going to be presets and which one of these are going to be unlocks. These are mostly all tests currently. But as you can see, we have a mixture so far. I've created wood, stripes, dots, and scratch. Wood, as you can see, is a little bit different than the rest. I'll get into that in a second. When we apply wood and we remove the main tint, you'll see that there is now a wood texture here, and we can further adjust how much of a wood texture we want by adjusting the texture scales X and its Y. We can rotate it, and I will say this is one of the first spots of possible limitations on the weapons. As this is overlaying the current texture, some weapons might not always turn out exactly how you want it to. It might look a little weird first person, but generally by playing with the texture scale on its X and its Y axis and the rotation, you'll probably find something that is passable for what you're looking for. I'm not going to say what I'm going to do right now is perfect, but this doesn't look too bad. And then further, as you already saw when we had the red tint on it, we can then make this red wood, orange wood. Let's say maybe we want to do like a blue wood theme. You can adjust how much the blue does overlay. And once again, you are seeing that is more of a blend. This blue is mixing with this brown. And that's just because if we had made this wood texture white and gray, you wouldn't really get all the knots and turns of the actual texture itself. Maybe as we play around with how the textures are built, we'll be able to find something like that. But for the time being, this still allows you to do a wood texture. Now, on the other hand, though, when we do something like stripes, stripes are made with white and gray, which means you will always have a base version of your standard color and then a darker version of it, allowing you to do these cool tiger stripe effects. You're able to, again, adjust the scale so it looks a little bit better how you want. You can adjust this. And then, if we go ahead and equip this and we go in-game, and we go ahead and swap over to it, it's all applied. You can aim down sights, you can shoot, everything still works exactly how you would expect it to work. Let's get really crazy here. Let's just say you really like these different weapons with different textures. You can go ahead and add a scratched element onto it. Maybe we'll make the scratch part of the gun maybe more towards we'll make it towards more of a gray blue. Crack this up. Right now you see no texture because we just got to scale it up. There we go. We're starting to see them in. Rotate it until you get to a spot that you like. There we go. Maybe we'll do this. I think it's maybe a little bit too bright right now, so we're going to make it a little bit darker. And now we have some dark gray scratches on the bottom. If we didn't like that, we could change it to dots. The dots is where you really want to mess with the scale because obviously everything's getting stretched. So once you start shrinking it down, and then this is going to be where you're going to start seeing some of the limitations. Because this is applying to this, these elements are not equal widths, so that's when things are not going to always scale up exactly how you'd expect it to. But what we're really hoping, though, is that because of the amount of customization you have, these elements won't bother the player too much because you'll be able to find something that you like. Even if this doesn't exactly apply how you want it to apply, you'll still be able to find something else that does do what you want it to. Also, I should mention that having it on around the base of where the magazine's held on the weapon, the grip, it's not always the biggest deal either because that part isn't really in vision. Your character's hand is wrapped around it or it's outside of camera view. You mostly just see this top part here. And then if you're wondering, yes, absolutely, you could go in here. You can apply texture onto the barrel here. So we can make this thing nice and shiny blue. Can make the stripes really come out. This obviously looks ugly. I'm not going to pretend this looks good. I'm not an artist, but the idea here is, once again, we're giving players the tools to really mess around and create the weapon that they want. Now let's talk about another small minor limitation here. I talked about in Destiny that some weapons don't always shade how you want them to. And this is going to be both a limitation for us, but also an opportunity. So this is our first Apex weapon. These are like exotic weapons that have really cool effects. This weapon here, as you fire it, it gains rate of fire, but it also reduces its minimum and maximum range to do damage. And when you're over a certain number of stacks, you can throw it as a grenade. Now, when you throw the grenade, you throw this crystal. Adjusting the texture on this crystal here and then applying it to the grenade animation is more difficult than it sounds, at least for how this has been set up. So that part of the weapon, unfortunately, is not being shaded in this particular weapon. But there's not going to be a lot of weapons that do that, where you're taking parts of your weapons and throwing them. So it just means for certain weapons like that. And then also, if you notice, if I'm hovering over primary, this is adjusting the entire red and black element here. That is obviously a limitation, but that's strictly because of how I designed this weapon. This is part of a learning process, so either eventually I will come back and adjust it so that the top and bottom are two separate parts, or just going forward, we'll make sure that weapons are built in a sense of this. Obviously, the final limitation here is that we're only up to 5 categories here. We could have done more, but as you add more categories, it adds in more selection for the players, which is both good and bad. It can create paralysis of trying to figure out how everything lines up, which pieces you're adjusting, which pieces look good, what pieces are in camera. So we did limit to 5. I feel like 5 categories is pretty good, where we can group stuff up fairly well together. Like this weapon on its own, for example, has the base as a primary, secondary being the barrel, alternative being these tubes, the back of the weapon being the alternative 2, and then alternative 3 is just the trigger. We could have literally put the trigger as part of the bottom part here and put the bottom part as part of alternative 3, and that would have been totally fine, and that would have shaded pretty well. Now, some other features that we've included, let's just say you've built this gun, it looks funny, but at the end of the day, it doesn't look exactly how you'd like it. Obviously, there are reset buttons, so you can just go ahead and get back to the base weapon, no problem at all. Let's just say you create something that you're really proud of. I'm going to just build something really quickly here. So you've built this really cool bronze looking top with the stripes, and you want to use that in other elements. You can copy the code, go in here, paste the code. It is now automatically brought over. You're going to probably have to mess with the way it's applied a bit because of how the lighting is, but it still brings over the base elements of the weapon. So we can go and bring that up. We can paste it everywhere if we want. We can even paste it on a different gun if we're really a huge fan of it. We want all our guns to look the same. Or even better, sharing it with your friends. Imagine being in the Discord, you see somebody with a weapon that you're like, wow, I really like how they got this bronze effect. They really made it look like it's actually made of bronze. You can ask for the code. They can come in here, grab the base code of what they've used, copy code, and then the code pastes in a very clean set of numbers like this. Yeah, it's a long string of numbers, but that's because each of these numbers represents different elements, such as the version number, the angle, the scale, the rotation. It basically takes all of this information and applies it into a quick number code that then, if somebody shares it to you on Discord, you can go ahead, copy that into your clipboard, and then you paste it. So it's a system I'm very, very happy that we got applied so quickly. I do think that player customization is really crucial. I think we have a very cool option here. And as we go, we'll get better at knowing how to build these textures, how to build our weapons so that the textures apply in more sensible ways, perhaps making it so that the grip is not attached to the bottom part of the weapon, etc. So I really hope that this shows you guys like the potential, and I hope it even gets you excited and start thinking about like, oh, like I'm really excited to make a purple and orange weapon, because maybe purple and orange are your favorite colors. I'm very excited about the fact that it also means our apex and exotic weapons, though they will have very defined, interesting, and unique looks, it doesn't stop the player from going in and creating their own version of these weapons, creating what they think's cool. Like if you think it's really funny to have a wood textured colored alien weapon with wood barrel go full on wooden bender, you can do that. And I think as we add more elements, this is going to get better. The last part I want to call out is there's 2 more elements we want to add into weapon customization that we haven't added in yet. I'm hoping to add a decal option here where each weapon will have one spot that a decal can go on, which will be like a sticker essentially. So maybe it'll be a set scratch mark, maybe it'll be like a some sort of icon from the game. And then some weapons will also be able to alter their scopes. Those are 2 elements that we'll be adding much further down the line, though. They're not really a priority right now, but as you can see, it just means that there's gonna be a lot here, and I feel like it's also just not overbearing. I feel like when you look at this, like you can quickly play with a lot of these things and fully understand what exactly it's doing. And if you don't really want touch, roughness, metallic much, it's pretty easy just to put it all the way up or all the way down. But for those that really want to perfect their weapon looks, they can. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Make sure to subscribe. Let me know down in the comments if there's any textures that you would like to see in the game, any callouts, anything in particular you're excited about for this system. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.